Hey guys, tonight we slip back to December 24th, 1294, in the windswept market square of Lincoln, where frost glitters on half-frozen puddles and a smoky haze from peat fires hangs low under a sky already bruised with night. You stand shoulder to shoulder with townsfolk wrapped in wool cloaks that smell faintly of lanolin and wood smoke, everyone shuffling toward the cathedral as the bells begin to toll. The stone beneath your boots feels colder than your last breakup, and the air tastes like iron. A baker's boy darts past you, carrying a lantern that sputters in the wind, and an anxious hush settles as midnight mass approaches. You can feel the mix of excitement and dread, because while the season promises warmth, celebration, and maybe the world's most intense pot of pottage, the winter still presses hard. And survival isn't exactly guaranteed. Yeah, you probably won't survive this. If you're curious about what Christmas was really like in medieval times, rituals, fasting, feasting, music, mischief, all of it, snuggle in and don't wander off like an unwatched piglet. Drop your location and local time in the comments so we can see who's joining this medieval midnight stroll around the world tonight. And if you're listening while getting cozy for the holidays, let me know what your favourite winter tradition is. All right, winter candles lit, cloaks wrapped tight. Let's head straight into the world of medieval Christmas. You push through the crowd as the bells toll again, long, deep and vibrating through your ribs. Everything about this moment, this eve of Christ's Mass, sits inside a bigger, strict structure the medieval world lives by. Christmas isn't just one day, it's part of an entire season carved sharply into the church calendar. You feel that structure in the way people breathe, move, and even break their bread, or in your case, your slightly stale hunk of rye. In medieval Europe, Christmas is a pivot point in the year, not because of commercial pressure or discount sales, but because for 4 long weeks, the entire community has been fasting. Yes, Christmas starts with everyone hungry. Advent is a countdown measured in what you can't eat, and honestly, that does a lot to make Christmas Eve feel like the Super Bowl of food-related anticipation. The church expects people to treat December as a time of spiritual preparation, so even though the bells and candles and faint gossip of upcoming merriment surround you, everyone's stomach is basically whispering, just hold on a little longer. Around you, villagers shuffle their feet, stamping snowmelt from their boots. Most haven't had meat or dairy for weeks. The wealthy might have cheated a bit, medicinal exceptions, but regular folks. They follow the rules because the priest doesn't skip sermons about spiritual discipline. You can still hear yesterday's warning echoing. Let not your appetite rule you, lest you enter the feast unprepared. A child in front of you gives you that look, half sleepy, half miserable, that says he's counting the hours until he can eat a sausage again. Although you're here in the dead of winter, the season pulses with activity. Christmas marks the shift from the restraint of Advent to the revelry of the 12 days. But the big feast hasn't started yet. Tonight's about waiting. That's a major medieval theme. Hurry to church, hurry to pray, hurry to reach the end of the line for a seat, but spiritually. Slow down, wait, reflect, practice patience, preferably without complaining about how much your toes hurt. A woman brushes past you carrying a sprig of holly tied with red wool. She's bringing it inside for decoration, even though the church is already smelling like a botanical garden that's slightly given up on life. Evergreen boughs line the nave, placed with the careful symbolism medieval folks love. Eternal life, hope, and a little touch of colour to convince everyone that the world isn't entirely dead. It's not the glitzy modern version of Christmas decor, but it's effective. And at this point, the bar is low. Even one green leaf feels like a party. People file into the cathedral, and you follow, slipping into a world of soft candlelight and echoing chants warming up in the choir loft. Christmas structures every heartbeat here. For weeks, priests have been preparing special liturgies, rehearsing chants, and reviewing which passages will be read. And you? You're about to stand through hours of service, because medieval pews basically don't exist. Think of it as the season's most challenging leg workout. The air is thick with incense and your eyes water, but in a holy way, obviously. Children cling to their mothers' skirts. Tradesmen linger near the back, still smelling strongly of their craft. Tanners like a well-worn boot, smiths like warm metal, fishermen like, well, medieval fish. Everyone's here because Christmas is the social glue of the year. You don't skip Mass unless you want your neighbours whispering about your soul like they're rating a questionable casserole. The priest lifts his hands, and the first chant rolls through the nave like a wave, reverberating off the stone vaulting. You can feel it more than hear it. The sound wraps around you, warm as a wool blanket. This service is the heart of medieval Christmas. And even though the next few hours will be a marathon of standing, kneeling, listening, and trying very hard not to fall asleep, the atmosphere is electric. Modern Christmas music slaps, sure, but Gregorian chant at midnight in a towering cathedral, that's a full-body experience. As the readings begin, you steal glances around. You can trace the bones of medieval Christmas right here. Reverence, community, ritual. There's no Santa, no stockings, no gingerbread houses, though you might get spicy wafers if you visit a particularly rich household tomorrow. What people expect from Christmas in this century is spiritual renewal, the lifting of winter gloom, and an excuse to stop working quite so brutally hard for a handful of days. You inhale, feeling the cold air seep in through cracks in the cathedral doors, a reminder that the world outside is harsh and winter is very real. One bad harvest, one hard freeze, one unlucky illness, and the stakes shift fast. That's why Christmas hits differently here. There's relief in surviving another year, gratitude for whatever warmth and food you still have, and a communal sense that maybe, just maybe, the returning light of the season will bring mercy. A choir boy coughs behind you, a brittle winter-dry sound. You catch the faint scent of beeswax, the crackle of torches along the walls, the soft shuffling as people adjust their weight. Someone's stomach growls loudly enough to echo. 3 people glance back. The culprit stares at his boots as if hoping the floor will swallow him. Your own stomach isn't doing much better, to be honest. Advent fasting has trimmed the edges of everyone's patience, which explains why medieval jokes often hit extra hard tonight. The man beside you mutters something about hoping the priest hurries so he doesn't pass out and become a Christmas miracle. Resurrected by stew, you stifle a laugh. The season demands it. The choir shifts into a brighter chant and soft murmurs ripple through the crowd. You can feel anticipation climbing. Midnight approaches. After this, after all these hours, Christmas begins. People briefly close their eyes, whispering prayers for health or crops or the safe birth of a neighbour's child. The collective breath of the room almost becomes its own presence. Outside, snow begins to fall again, tapping gently against stained glass windows that gleam faintly in the dim light. Someone cracks the door to peek, and a cold draught races inside like a mischievous sprite. A few candles flicker dangerously. You spot a boy trying to catch snowflakes on his tongue before his mother yanks him back indoors. He sticks his tongue out anyway when she isn't looking. Time crawls. Your feet ache. You swear your left knee has locked into permanent kneeling position, but the rhythm of the service pulls you along. Readings, chants, prayers, responses. You fall into the current, the steady pulse of centuries of tradition. And you realize something. Medieval people live inside the calendar in a way modern people don't. The church shapes everything from meals to moods to work schedules. Christmas is grand, but it's also structured, defined, and deeply rooted. When the priest begins the final blessing, you feel a buzz pass through the congregation. Someone behind you whispers, "It's time," and just like that, the service ends. The bells explode into life, a jubilant peal that bounces down the streets and ricochets off snow-covered roofs. Everyone stirs at once, stretching stiff joints, muttering prayers, exchanging relieved smiles. You step out into the night, breath steaming. The world feels transformed, not magically, just meaningfully. The fast is technically over. Christmas has begun. People hurry home to light hearths, share warm ale, maybe sneak a bite of something rich before the main feast. The square fills with voices, laughter, and the rustle of cloaks. Kids stomp patterns in the snow. A few brave souls throw snowballs. One completely misses and beans a passing donkey. The donkey kicks a bucket in revenge. This is medieval Christmas at its starting point. Cold, hungry, reverent, joyful, and absolutely alive. You walk through the frosty night with the rest of the crowd, letting the warmth of the cathedral fade from your cloak as the streets stretch ahead like dark ribbons. Christmas might have officially begun, but you're still wrapped tight inside the memory of Advent, the long, hungry countdown that shaped every hour leading up to this moment. Even now, as neighbours hurry past with wide grins and plans to break out their hidden jugs of ale, your body hasn't quite caught up. Weeks of fasting don't disappear the instant the bells finish ringing. Advent leaves marks on you, on everyone, and you feel it in your stomach, in your breath, in the heaviness behind your ribs. You glance toward a row of timber-framed houses where faint candlelight glows through oiled parchment windows. Behind one door, a family is whispering excitedly. You hear pots clatter like a drummer testing his sticks. But before we get to those simmering pots, you need to understand just how strict life has been these last 4 weeks. Advent is the medieval version of putting the entire village on airplane mode. Everything slows, everything empties, everything waits. Since late November, you've been living in restraint. Culinary restraint, social restraint, even emotional restraint. Medieval Advent isn't the warm-up party modern Christmas has turned into. There are no gingerbread cookies, no festive movies, no mulled wine taste testers. Instead, the church requires almost every adult to fast. Not the trendy intermittent kind. We're talking real, daily, spiritual discipline. Meat forbidden, animal fats forbidden, dairy forbidden. You get fish only if the market allows, and fish in winter is about as reliable as a cat swearing it didn't knock your cup off the table. You trudge past a row of shuttered stalls in the market square. Even though the feast is coming, the evidence of fasting still lingers. No bacon hanging from the butcher's hooks, no cheese rounds stacked in the dairy shed. You catch yourself glancing at a small wooden sign that once announced fresh eggs for sale. During Advent, eggs were mostly off limits too, so hens got a break and you got porridge. Lots and lots of porridge. People argue about how strictly everyone followed the rules. Sure, the nobility had loopholes the size of cathedral doors. If a nobleman claimed he needed meat for his health, nobody fought him too hard. Meanwhile, peasants, who couldn't afford medical exceptions or conveniently redefining what counts as an animal product, kept their pots sparse. They simmered dried peas, cabbage, leeks, onions, whatever survived winter storage without turning into a biology experiment. You've eaten so much pea pottage lately that you're fairly sure you're now 11% legume. You stop beside a baker's cart, long abandoned except for a cloth that still smells faintly of rye. Bread during Advent is simpler, a little flatter, baked without luxurious fats or enrichments. The good stuff, the festival loaves, the spiced buns, the sweetened wafers, is saved for tonight and tomorrow. During the fast, meals are meant to be plain, easy to cook, and even easier to feel guilty about if you spice them too heavily. But Advent isn't just food rules, it's a whole lifestyle shift. People wake earlier, pray more often, speak more quietly. Even the atmosphere in households changes. You remember hearing a husband mutter to his wife that Advent turns every home into a monastery, minus the literacy, and plus the constant draft. Children are told to behave better, though behaviour is relative. A child not catapulting turnips across the room counts as better. Chores continue, of course. Life doesn't stop just because the church calendar says reflect and repent. But even work takes on a subdued rhythm. Craftsmen simplify tasks. Merchants open their shops fewer hours. Servants do their duties more slowly, partly because they're hungry, partly because winter darkness shrinks the usable day. Without sunlight, people conserve energy like human-shaped candles half burned down. As you walk, you overhear two older women discussing how much harder fasting feels now than in their youth. One says her joints ache more in the cold, the other claims God is testing her patience. You wonder if God might also test whether you can resist the savoury smell drifting from a nearby doorway. Someone has jumped the gun on feasting, clearly. Either that or they're boiling something excessively hopeful. Children didn't fast in the strictest sense, but their meals were reduced too. Tonight they bounce with anticipation, but earlier days of Advent were full of whining, drooping shoulders and the beloved medieval phrase, "Eat your pottage, or you'll get nothing else." Sometimes a child would receive a treat like dried fruit or honey. Tiny luxuries reserved for feast days, or at least used as bribery to stop them from poking the dog for entertainment. You pass the parish priest's house. Even he was bound by the fast, though clerics had some wiggle room that ordinary villagers did not. He likely spent the last weeks planning sermons, checking liturgical books, and reminding everyone, gently but with increasing volume, of their obligations. Advent is serious business. Priests preach about penance, confession, humility. They hammer home the message, prepare your soul, not your stomach. Yet somehow they leave out the fact that preparing your soul is infinitely harder when your stomach sounds like a dying goose. You turn down a narrow lane where a candle glows under a wooden awning. A family sits inside, huddled close to a fire that might generously be called aspiring. A woman slices a loaf of the plainest bread you've ever seen. Her youngest child watches with the intensity of someone observing a treasure chest being opened. Advent bread may be simple, but hunger makes it heroic. Meals these past weeks also followed stricter timing. People were encouraged to eat only once a day or keep meals extremely modest. You've had days where your whole diet amounted to a bowl of thin pottage and a crust of dark bread. On Fridays the fast feels even heavier, and during Ember Days, quarterly fasting periods within Advent, things get rough enough that even seasoned medieval stomachs grumble like displeased thunder. But despite the discomfort, there's purpose behind all this restraint. You feel it in the way villagers talk about the feast to come. Advent amplifies longing. It stretches anticipation until Christmas feels like a sunrise after weeks of twilight. Without the fast, the feast wouldn't mean as much. Medieval people understood this deeply, even if they didn't enjoy the process. Fasting wasn't punishment, it was preparation, a chance to step back from daily indulgence, what little indulgence they had, and turn their attention toward the sacred. Yet humans are humans no matter the century. A man stumbling out of his house ahead of you mutters to his friend, "If I hear one more sermon about self-denial, I'll deny myself the sermon." His friend snorts so loudly you think he's swallowed a goose quill. You follow the path toward the town well. The air grows colder, sharper. Snowflakes drift lazily, spinning like tiny sparks. People gather, drawing water for their late-night cooking. One woman jokes that her cauldron hasn't boiled anything interesting since Michaelmas. Another says at this point she would eat boiled shoe leather if it came with a pinch of salt. That earns everyone's sympathy. Salt has been expensive this winter, and families have rationed it carefully. During Advent, spices also go into hiding. Black pepper, ginger, cinnamon, cloves. These luxuries stay tucked away in chests until the feast. Only the wealthy sniff them during the fast, usually under the guise of medicinal remedies. You might have coughed theatrically once or twice to justify a pinch of ginger in your broth. The jury's out on whether it convinced anyone. As you near the edge of town, you see fields stretching out, faintly lit by the moon. Farmers walk the boundary lines, checking fences and making sure no animals escaped. Even animals feel Advent in their way. Chickens lay fewer eggs. Cows produce less milk, though honestly, the lack of dairy consumption makes that slightly less tragic. Pigs snuffle in their pens, blissfully unaware they're about to become the stars of tomorrow's feast. The landscape itself sits in quiet anticipation, bare trees standing like dark spires. Advent teaches you to look at emptiness without flinching, to sit with it, to let hunger sharpen your senses. You understand why medieval people experienced the season so intensely. Every discomfort tied them to the earth, to their faith, to each other. You pass a small cottage where a man stirs a pot of something thin and steaming. He waves you over, offering a whiff. "Been living on this for days," he says. "If it doesn't kill me, it'll make Christmas taste like heaven." His wife rolls her eyes but doesn't disagree. Inside another home, a grandmother teaches her grandchildren how to mend old clothes by firelight. She tells them that patience is a virtue, and Advent is the yearly reminder. The youngest child asks if patience tastes better than fish pottage. The grandmother doesn't answer, which you interpret as, "No, but I'm trying my best." Tonight, though, the mood is lifting. People step lightly, shoulders relax, windows glow brighter. Even the farce seems to loosen its grip as the promise of food, warmth, and celebration hovers like a warm cloak waiting to be draped across your winter-chilled frame. As you round a corner, you spot a group of teenagers pretending they weren't just sneaking bites of something forbidden. One of them wipes grease off his chin at the exact moment his mother steps outside. She crosses her arms. He immediately tries to claim he fell face first into the cooking pot. It does not work. You breathe deeply, letting the night air fill your lungs. The rules of Advent have shaped you, narrowed your world, taught you discipline, and now, finally, delivered you to the feast on the other side. Tomorrow these streets will smell like roasting meat, buttery pies, sweetened bread, and warm ale. But for now, you carry the memory of restraint, knowing it will make every bite taste richer, every sound sweeter, every moment more vivid. Christmas is here, but Advent still echoes in your bones. You make your way back toward the cathedral, letting the streets wind around you as the bells taper into softer aftershocks in the cold night air. Christmas has begun, yes, but midnight mass is just the opening act. Medieval Christmas is built on church services the way a castle is built on stone. Layer after layer, all weighty, all essential, and right now, with the taste of incense still clinging to your throat, you're heading deeper into the heartbeat of the season, the liturgy, the rituals, the sounds, and the sacred choreography of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. As you approach the cathedral again, you find that you're not alone. People linger outside like moths circling the last warm flame of the night. Some are chatting excitedly about the Mass that just ended. Others are warming their hands over small braziers. A sleepy-looking apprentice mutters loudly that he's going straight home to collapse before the next round of services starts. His master elbows him and reminds him that Christmas Day isn't exactly known for its sleep schedule. The apprentice groans like a man being asked to carry an anvil uphill. Midnight Mass is over, but medieval Christmas liturgy is a whole sequence, a carefully orchestrated marathon of devotion. Tonight's service is just one of 3 major masses performed across Christmas Day, and each one carries its own flavour, its own symbolism, its own place within the sacred rhythm of the season. You might be tired now, but before long you'll be back on your feet, and knees, and feet again, doing the sacred shuffle that defines medieval worship. You drift closer to the great cathedral doors. They're slightly open, letting out a warm golden glow and the faint hum of continued activity. Even though the congregation has emptied, priests and choir boys bustle about inside, preparing for the next service like stagehands resetting a set between acts. You slip in quietly, taking advantage of the lingering warmth as clerics rearrange candles and adjust books on reading stands. Inside, everything feels both serene and busy. You watch a young acolyte trying to relight a stubborn candle. It sputters 3 times before finally catching, at which point he beams with the satisfaction of someone who has just defeated a minor demon. Another boy sweeps up pine needles that have fallen from the evergreen boughs, muttering that he doesn't understand why trees must shed inside as well as outside. As you take in the scene, The magnitude of what's ahead settles in. Medieval Christmas isn't built around family gatherings or gift exchanges that take 3 hours flat. Here, the very structure of celebration is liturgical. Every mass, chant and procession carries centuries of tradition. Most people understand the season primarily through what happens here, inside these towering stone walls. This is where you learn the meaning of the holiday. Not through stories read by a fire, but through the rhythm of prayers and the echo of voices rising with the cold night air. After midnight mass, the next major service is the dawn mass, scheduled for a time when most sane people would still be cocooned in bed. But medieval people, they treat Christmas Day like an endurance contest wrapped in holiness. You'll barely have time to warm your toes before the bells call you back. And the dawn mass is no quick affair. It focuses heavily on light. Fitting, since the sun rises late and reluctantly this time of year. The church seizes the symbolism. Light breaking darkness. Hope piercing winter's chill. A reminder that the world is shifting, even if it doesn't look like it outside. Tonight's service, Midnight Mass, celebrates mystery and anticipation. The Dawn Mass celebrates revelation. And the final Christmas Day Mass, performed later in the morning, centers on joy, community, and the proclamation of the feast itself. Think of the three Masses as a spiritual sandwich. Midnight sets the tone, dawn brings the illumination, and the Day Mass seals the celebration. You seat yourself along the edge of the nave, watching a priest flip through a massive leather-bound missal. His lips move silently as he reviews the readings for the morning. You can tell he's tired. His shoulders droop, his candle dips dangerously, and he rubs his eyes in that universal "I should have gone to bed earlier" gesture. It's comforting to know exhaustion is timeless. The choir director, a stern man with expressive eyebrows, gathers the choir boys for a quick run-through of the chants for the dawn mass. The boys huddle together, shivering slightly, some swaying on their feet. One of them sneaks a yawn so wide it threatens to unhinge his jaw. The director claps sharply. The boy nearly jumps out of his shoes. But when they begin to sing, something shifts. Their voices, clear and bright, rise toward the vaulted ceiling like warm breath on cold air. You can hear the difference already. The melodies planned for dawn are lighter than the heavy solemnity of the midnight service. They're hopeful, almost expectant, like birds planning their spring migration months too early. You move closer to one of the side chapels, where candles flicker around a carved nativity scene. It's not the elaborate painted kind you might expect, no cherubic faces or soft pastels. This one is carved from wood, the lines rough, but reverent. The ox and donkey look slightly bewildered, as if unsure how they ended up as theological symbols. Baby Jesus is carved with an expression that might be serenity or indigestion. Medieval artisans were not known for subtlety. As you study the carving, a pair of elderly parishioners totter in, speaking softly about which psalms will be sung at dawn. One claims she knows them all by heart, the other counters that knowing them doesn't matter if you're half asleep while singing. They laugh softly, then kneel together with the ease of people who have done this routine hundreds of times. You notice that the entire liturgical structure isn't just about ritual, it's about community. Everyone participates, from nobles in fur-lined mantles to beggars who slip in for warmth as much as salvation. The wealthy donate candles, altar cloths, or even entire processional banners embroidered in gold thread. The poor offer prayers, labour, or the simple warmth of their presence. Tonight's procession included people from every corner of town, winding slowly through the streets with flickering lights, chanting hymns that have been sung for centuries. Processions themselves are a huge part of medieval Christmas. The one tonight moved in a long snaking line through the square, past homes dressed in holly and evergreen, then right up to the cathedral doors. Sometimes, if the town is especially devout, or especially enthusiastic, there will be a second procession before the dawn mass. Tomorrow morning you might find yourself marching behind a statue of the Virgin Mary, while trying not to slip on frozen cobblestones. Don't worry, everyone slips at least once, even priests, especially priests. The readings during Christmas services are selected carefully. At midnight, passages centre on prophecy and anticipation, Old Testament texts that point forward to hope. At dawn, the focus shifts to the Nativity itself, blending the warmth of the story with the chill of the early morning air. Later, during the day Mass, the readings expand outward, celebrating salvation and the universality of the message. Priests deliver sermons tailored to each moment. Midnight sermons are full of solemn reminders. Dawn sermons lighten a little. Day Mass sermons can get downright cheerful by medieval standards. One priest in a nearby village was known to open his Christmas morning sermon every year with the line, "Rejoice, for today even the geese are not safe." His parishioners adored him. You linger as choir rehearsal ends, the boys bowing awkwardly before dispersing like a cluster of sleepy sparrows. The choir director rubs his temples in a way that suggests he is reconsidering every life choice that led him here. Meanwhile, a few priests gather near the altar, discussing the order of the upcoming Mass. One of them worries about stumbling over the Latin again. Another assures him that if he does, nobody will notice. They'll all be too tired. The structure of medieval Christmas liturgy doesn't exist in isolation. It shapes the entire day. Meals revolve around it. Family gatherings wait for it. Even the feast itself pauses for services. Medieval people do not binge food or festivity without intermission. They punctuate everything with devotion. A noble household might feast between masses, breaking just long enough to inhale roast goose before returning to church, with crumbs still clinging to their sleeves. You think about the sheer endurance it takes. Imagine waking before dawn in winter, trudging back to a cold stone church, standing through long readings, kneeling on harder floors, then doing it again later. Medieval Christmas may be joyful, but it's also physically demanding. You earn your feast with tired legs and hoarse voices. You lift your gaze to the stained glass windows, dark now but waiting for sunrise to bring them alive. In a few hours, the dawn Mass will fill the cathedral with pale morning light filtering through images of saints and angels. People will shiver in the cold, breath misting, while chants echo in the vast stone space. Candles will flicker in the draughts, and even the most exhausted villager will feel something shift, something bright, something warm, something profoundly human. That is the power of medieval liturgy. It's not fast, it's not short, it's not designed for comfort, it's designed for immersion, the way winter immerses you in cold or fire immerses you in heat. You don't just watch the service, you live inside it. Outside, the wind picks up, whistling faintly through the cracks in the roof tiles. Snow drifts silently. A priest snuffs the candle nearest you, giving you a tired smile as he passes. You stand, stretching your legs. Soon the bells will call you back for the next chapter of this long day, but for now you let the quiet linger. You breathe in the lingering incense, the faint scent of beeswax, the distant soft hum of preparation. You watch the last few lanterns sway as clerics make their final rounds. Christmas in the medieval world isn't just celebrated. It's sung, prayed, marched, lit, read, preached and experienced in every aching muscle and every lifted voice. And the night is only beginning. You wake to the smell of something rich, something hot and savoury and absolutely gloriously forbidden during the last 4 weeks. It hits you the moment your eyes open. Meat. Actual meat. Not the memory of meat, not the rumour of meat, but real, roasting, crackling, fat-sizzling meat. The kind of smell that announces in no uncertain terms that Advent is over and your entire digestive system can come out of hiding. Morning light leaks weakly through parchment windows. The air is cold enough that you can see your breath, but you barely notice because the scent drifting through the house is doing the heavy lifting when it comes to warmth. You shuffle toward the hearth, your joints making medieval sound effects, and find your host family already bustling like bees who've discovered caffeine. Today is the feast they've been talking about for weeks, the feast they've been planning since the harvest. the feast that will probably undo every spiritual benefit of fasting in less than 12 hours, and you're about to dive into it head first. Your host, Marjorie, a woman built of equal parts muscle, willpower, and the ability to control her household with one raised eyebrow, stands at the hearth turning a spit. On it rotates a plump goose, its skin slowly crisping to a deep golden brown. Fat drips into the tray below with soft hisses, each drop adding to the smell that's now permanently tattooed on your soul. She glances over her shoulder and says, "You're up late." You glance at the window. It's barely dawn. Medieval families don't waste feast days sleeping. They've got too much to cook, too many mouths to feed, too many traditions to uphold before any of the food even hits the table. While you rub sleep from your eyes, Marjorie barks orders like an experienced commander. The oldest daughter carries in a bowl of chopped onions and leeks. Two small boys wrestle with a sack of barley grains like it's possessed by spirits. The oldest son sharpens a knife so long it qualifies as a family heirloom. You're warned not to touch anything unless you know whether it's food, fuel, or a weapon used to threaten anyone who tries to steal a bite prematurely. The house is a hive of sounds. Chopping, grinding, boiling, laughter, clattering pots, more chopping, more laughter, occasional yelling, and the steady crackle of the hearth fire. Medieval Christmas feasting requires an entire team of humans working in concert, and by in concert I mean loudly, with a lot of bumping into each other. Before you can even ask how you can help, Marjorie thrusts a bowl of dough into your hands and says, "Knead!" You oblige. The dough is dense, sticky, and determined to glue itself to your fingers for the next several hours. But as you work, the room fills with more holiday smells: nutmeg, ginger, dried fruit, herbs, sizzling bird fat, and something that might be honey or might be sap from the firewood. Hard to say. This feast is a big deal. It's not just a meal, it's the crown jewel of the holiday season. Tonight and throughout the next 12 days, households will transform simple ingredients into dishes that feel extravagant after weeks of fasting. And this particular household is aiming high, from the goose on the spit to the pottage bubbling in a cauldron big enough to drown a toddler. Speaking of pottage, you lean over the cauldron and inhale the steam rising from the mix of barley, leeks, and scraps of meat that would have been too precious to use earlier in the year. The scent alone could convert the most hardened skeptic into a believer in Christmas miracles. Children weave between adults like tiny, highly motivated bees. One of them guards a small pouch of imported spices with a level of seriousness normally reserved for crown jewels. Spices like pepper, ginger, and cinnamon are rare and expensive, and even using a pinch signals that this is no ordinary meal. After all, Christmas isn't just a celebration. It's a declaration of abundance in a world where scarcity is often the default setting. You take a moment to step outside and get some air, though honestly you're just trying to distract your stomach from staging a rebellion. The cold morning hits your face like a bucket of ice, but even outside the sounds of feasting preparations spill from neighbouring homes. You hear chickens squawking, dogs barking, children laughing, and the unmistakable thud of someone chopping wood, like they're trying to defeat it in honourable combat. Across the lane, a family is preparing a boar's head. Yes, an actual boar's head. They've cleaned it, singed it, and are in the process of decorating it with bay leaves and berries. The head will later be carried to the table with great ceremony, partly to honour tradition, and partly to intimidate guests into respecting the host's cooking skills. A boy notices you staring and calls, "First time." You nod. He grins with the glee of someone who has witnessed many a boar's head feast. He disappears inside before you can ask whether the boar's expression is supposed to look like that. Back in your own host household, the preparations have escalated. Dough has been rolled into pies. The pie crusts, thick, sturdy, and more like edible armour, are ready to be filled with minced meats, dried fruits, and spices. Marjorie proudly shows you a mince pie so heavy it requires 2 hands to lift. She warns you that eating more than one might cause your humours to rebel. You decide to take her word for it. You help stir the pottage again, careful not to splash the boiling mixture on yourself. Not that scalding injuries are uncommon today. Christmas cooking claims victims every year. A neighbour once lost half his eyebrows to an especially enthusiastic flambé attempt. The villagers still bring it up, frequently. While Marjorie seasons the goose, her husband carries in a jug of ale. Not the weak, watery ale they drink daily, but the strong stuff reserved for special occasions. He pours you a cup, you sip, and your throat immediately forgets how to behave. You cough so aggressively that Marjorie pats your back with the force of a blacksmith striking an anvil. When the laughter dies down, you take stock of all the dishes being prepared. In a wealthy household, you'd expect even more. Swan, peacock, beef, custards, marchpane sculptures, elaborate pastries shaped like castles or animals. But here, in this hard-working but modest home, the feast is still impressive by medieval standards. You peek under a cloth and spot a platter of apples and dried pears, sliced and sprinkled with a pinch of rare sugar. In another corner, a bowl of custard, bright yellow from eggs saved specifically for the holiday, rests near the hearth, carefully guarded by one of the children who takes his job far too seriously. Marjorie pulls a tray of wafers from the hearth oven. They're thin, crisp, and slightly sweet, the medieval ancestor of holiday cookies. She hands one to you and you bite into it. It shatters beautifully, and your taste buds start composing a thank you letter. The greatest challenge of the day, however, isn't cooking the food, it's not eating it too early. The feast officially begins after the Christmas Day Mass, and medieval people take that timing seriously. There's nothing like spending the entire morning cooking delicious dishes you're forbidden to touch. The cruelty is almost elegant. To distract yourself, you help the children decorate the main room. They hang evergreen branches along the beams, weave holly sprigs into garlands, and set out candles on every flat surface. Fire safety is not a medieval concept, so the room now resembles a cosy fire hazard with extra festive spirit. When the goose finally comes off the spit, Marjorie lets it rest before slicing. The skin crackles softly and the smell intensifies to a level that might be illegal in some countries. The children crowd around, eyes wide, hands extended, mouths dramatically open. Marjorie shoos them away with a wooden spoon. They retreat, but only to ambush from a different angle. Meanwhile, outside, neighbours begin calling to each other, comparing feast plans, inviting friends, and bragging about their dishes. One man claims he has a pot of pottage so delicious it brought a grown man to tears. Another woman announces she's made a tart filled with spiced apples and ground almonds. Her husband loudly takes credit. She loudly corrects him. The sound of the bells rolling across the town interrupts all the noise. It's time. The final Christmas Day Mass will begin soon, and all of this glorious food will have to wait just a little longer. You step outside with the family, heading back toward the cathedral. The smell of feast air follows you. Roasting goose, warm ale, spicy pies, sweet wafers, herbs, and the unmistakable whisper of fat sizzling into crackling. Your stomach growls in full operatic protest. Marjorie laughs. Patience, she says. You'll need it. But when the feast begins, she nods toward the cathedral, you'll forget every hunger you ever had. And you believe her, because medieval Christmas feasting isn't just eating, it's celebration, it's gratitude, it's survival, it's community, and it's about to begin. You return from the Christmas Day Mass with the rest of the town spilling into the streets, the air buzzing with anticipation that has nothing to do with liturgy and everything to do with the smell of roasting meat. By the time you reach the lane where your host family lives, you can already hear laughter, clattering pots, and someone loudly insisting that today, they deserve the biggest portion because they've been extra pious. No one agrees with him. But today isn't just about one household's feast. Medieval Christmas lays bare the sharp contrast between the way nobles, merchants, and peasants celebrate. Walk just a few streets from here, and you'll step into a different universe, one lined with tapestries, dripping with candles, and filled with dishes so extravagant they could pay a month's rent. Meanwhile, in humbler homes like Marjorie's, Christmas is equally cherished, maybe even more so, but grounded in simpler ingredients, louder rooms, and the warm, beautiful chaos of sharing what little you have. Before diving into your own feast, curiosity gets the best of you. You decide to take a stroll toward the manor house nearby, a wooden and stone structure perched on a slight rise above the village. You're not planning to crash the noble feast, you're bold, not suicidal, but you want to see how the other half lives on Christmas. The road leading uphill crunches under your boots. Snow clings to the branches of trees lining the path. By the time you reach the manor's outer yard, you're greeted by the unmistakable sight of servants, hauling trays bigger than possibly necessary. 2 men carry a platter bearing a whole roasted peacock, yes, peacock, refeathered for presentation so it looks majestic, slightly confused and ready to judge everyone in the room. One servant mutters, "If it sheds one more feather, I swear I'll scream." His companion elbows him and says nobles can't tell the difference anyway. You linger near the open door, careful not to block the constant stream of kitchen staff. Inside, warmth blasts out like a dragon's breath. You catch glimpses of the feast, shimmering gold and red fabrics draped across benches, wreaths of holly and ivy above the hearth, and the long table already lined with trenchers stacked high with food. At a noble Christmas feast, variety isn't just a luxury, it's a performance. Every dish signals status. Boar's head with gilded tusks, venison swimming in wine sauce, custard studded with imported spices, enormous loaves decorated with cut patterns, and swans roasted whole, wings spread as if preparing for flight. The lord of the manor sits at the high table, positioned so everyone must constantly look upward at him, literally and socially. More servants rush by carrying jugs of spiced wine, pitchers of ale, trays of sweetened wafers, and a ceramic bowl containing something so fragrant you want to follow them like a puppy. Inside, nobles sit on cushions, wrapped in fur-lined cloaks, already nibbling on candied nuts as they wait for the official start of the feast. You overhear one woman complaining that her cook ruined the marzipan castle centerpiece. Apparently the turret was crooked. A tragedy. You step aside as a steward marches past yelling, "Mind the floor! If anyone spills wine again, you'll be lapping it up like a dog." His voice echoes across the courtyard, and several servants immediately slow their steps. It's clear. Nobles feast in spectacles. Peasants feast in gratitude. You continue your walk back toward the village, your boots slipping slightly on ice as snow begins to drift down again. Slow, soft flakes that catch on your cloak. The contrast between manor and village becomes sharper with every step. The noble feast dazzles, but it feels distant, staged, like a theatre performance. Down here, in the crooked timbered houses with smoke curling from their chimneys, you find something else, something warm and real. As you step inside Marjorie's home, the heat from the hearth wraps around you like a heavy embrace. The goose is ready, the pottage is thick, the pies steam gently on the table, and the family, all 12 of them, counting cousins, neighbours, and 3 children who may or may not actually belong to the household, are buzzing like a hive preparing for the Queen. "Sit," Marjorie orders, pointing at an empty space on a long wooden bench. Before someone else steals your spot, you obey. Everyone squeezes around the table, elbows bumping, shoulders brushing, someone's knee pressing into yours because space is not a medieval luxury, but nobody cares. Today the room smells like heaven, the air sparkles with excitement, and for once no one is thinking about how thin the grain stores are or how harsh the winter might become. The table is a patchwork of dishes, the goose, glistening with crisped skin, the barley pottage, rich and comforting, the immense mince pie, its crust like golden armour encasing its fragrant filling, trenchers of bread, thick slices cut from dark loaves, bowls of stewed fruits, and the jug of strong ale placed strategically out of reach of children, but unfortunately within reach of the family's overly confident uncle. Marjorie's husband gives a brief blessing, simple, heartfelt, and then the feast begins with all the grace of a tournament charge. Children shove bread into their mouths so quickly you're amazed they're still breathing. Adults slice goose meat with exaggerated reverence, offering pieces to one another as if distributing relics. You take your first bite and nearly melt. After 4 weeks of fasting, the taste is almost overwhelming. Rich, salty, savoury, the fat crisp and perfect. Beside you, the youngest child tries to sneak an extra slice of pie and gets caught by Marjorie's eyebrow. The eyebrow alone. It is a weapon. This feast looks nothing like the noble one, but it has something even grander. Here, everyone contributes. The man next door brings his best honey cakes. A cousin arrives late carrying a jug of cider his family saved for this exact day. Neighbours drift in and out, adding to the noise, the food, the warmth. You catch a whisper of the differences again, thinking of the manor. There, food symbolises wealth, prestige and power. Here it symbolises survival, generosity, relief and connection. Someone passes you a bowl of stewed apples, and you take a spoonful. Sweet, tart, warm. You close your eyes for a moment, savouring everything about it. When you open them, you see Marjorie watching you with a half smile that says, "You get it now, don't you?" Yes, you get it. The conversation around the table spirals into stories. Someone recounts the time a donkey escaped during last year's feast and ate half the boar's head garnish. Someone else proudly announces that they didn't break any fast rules this year. Well, except the day they accidentally ate a sausage while checking its seasoning. The children lean closer, transfixed by the tale of a noble feast, where a minstrel once tripped over his own lute and landed face first in a custard pie. They find this so funny they nearly choke on their bread. As plates empty and refill, you notice how carefully the family divides portions. No one takes more than their share, not because food is scarce tonight, but because fairness is an unspoken rule. Everyone gets goose, everyone gets pottage, everyone gets a slice of pie, even the neighbour's dog gets a small scrap, though Marjorie pretends not to see. Later, when the dishes have been mostly cleared, by which I mean shoved into corners for washing tomorrow, the atmosphere softens. Adults lean back, bellies full, eyes heavy. Some sip ale with slow, contented swallows. Children sprawl across laps and benches half asleep, sticky-faced, clutching crumbs like tiny dragons protecting treasure. The noble feast up the hill is still going strong, no doubt. Courses will continue for hours. Peacock, swan, venison, eel pie, custards, decorative pastries, and minstrels will perform long after midnight. But here, the feast begins to dissolve into laughter, warmth, and the kind of quiet joy that settles into your bones. As the fire crackles, Marjorie's husband says softly, "This is Christmas, not the grand things. This." And he's right. It's the goose and the pottage. It's the crowded benches and shared stories. It's the pie crust crumbs clinging to your sleeve. It's the tired smiles and the soft snores of children. It's the feeling that for one day, just one, you have enough, and maybe more than enough. The glow of the feast still warms your stomach as the afternoon light slants low, turning every frost-covered rooftop into a glittering shard of silver. The house hums with that perfect holiday lethargy, the kind where everyone is full, half drowsy, and just active enough to remember they're supposed to do something festive. For medieval families, that something often involves gifts. Not the brightly wrapped, ribbon-tied kind we know today, but the humble, symbolic, deeply practical, and sometimes hilariously random gifts exchanged in a world where every item you own has a job. You settle back on the wooden bench as Marjorie begins clearing the table with the children's help. Or, to be more accurate, with the children standing nearby asking if they can go outside yet. Her husband nudges a basket under the table and lifts out a collection of small bundles wrapped in cloth. You blink. Gifts? For you? Apparently so. But before anyone hands anything out, Marjorie gives a speech, because in medieval households even gift-giving comes with ceremony. Christmas is for generosity, she says. What we have, we share. She looks around at her large, boisterous family, then adds dryly, even when we don't have much. Several children laugh. Several children miss the joke entirely, and one child proudly announces he found a bit of goose fat on his sleeve and intends to treasure it forever. Gift-giving in the medieval world isn't a universal obligation, nor is it a frantic dash to shop before the holiday. Instead, gifts tend to circulate in specific patterns, between lords and vassals, between masters and servants, between family, members, and often between rich households and the poor through almsgiving. Many gifts are timed to New Year's rather than Christmas Day, but today, Christmas proper, still brings a wave of exchanges deeply rooted in meaning. Marjorie gives the first gift to her oldest daughter, a length of ribbon dyed with precious woad. The girl beams and immediately wraps it around her braid, transforming herself from responsible older sibling to responsible older sibling with great hair. Her younger sister receives 2 small wooden spoons carved by their father. For helping with the cooking, he says, though helping in this household mostly means trying not to set things on fire. The boys receive new woolen mittens. They slip them on, immediately punch each other playfully, and announce that the mittens make the punches less painful but more fun. Medieval physics at work. You're next. Marjorie hands you a small parcel. Inside is a tiny carved charm, an evergreen sprig shaped from bone. For luck in winter, she says simply. For a moment you're speechless, then you tuck it into your cloak with reverence. In a world where winters are often merciless, this is no small gesture. Outside you hear bells ringing, not church bells this time, but handbells carried by children wandering house to house in a loosely organised attempt at carolling. Their voices crack and drift off key, but their enthusiasm is unstoppable. One particularly bold child calls out, "We'll sing for a penny! We'll sing for bread! We'll even sing for a warm onion!" Someone tosses them a handful of nuts instead. Gift exchange among families like Marjorie's tends to be small scale. Practical goods, homemade items, repairs, warm clothing or food. But wealthier households take things to another level. Curiosity pushes you outdoors again, strolling toward the bustling centre of the village where merchants and tradespeople live. Here, gifts reflect status, not to show off necessarily, but because medieval society thrives on relationships built through exchanges. A blacksmith gives his apprentice a new hammer with an iron head polished so brightly it could double as a mirror. The apprentice, clearly overwhelmed, promises loudly to hammer responsibly this year, which is met with immediate scepticism from every adult within earshot. A cooper, barrel maker, hands out small wooden toys carved from leftover staves, horses, swords, ducks, and one figure that vaguely resembles a bishop but might also be an eggplant. Hard to tell. The children love them anyway. Then there are the wealthier merchants and local officials. In front of one handsome stone house, a trader distributes coins to the poor, a traditional act of charity known as almsgiving. Unlike gifts within families, alms aren't about personal connection. They're about virtue, and about being seen being virtuous. A few villagers quietly mutter that the merchant gives more when the crowd is watching. You pretend you didn't hear it. Farther uphill, near the manor, the lord's household engages in a more formal gift exchange. Servants receive modest bonuses, cloth, shoes, wool blankets, or small monetary tokens. The steward announces each gift like a herald announcing knights at a tournament. Servants bow and thank their lord, though you notice a few sideways glances, probably checking whether they got the good blanket or the scratchy blanket. Inside the manor hall, noble gifts are even grander. You glimpse a fur-trimmed cloak, an intricately carved ivory comb, jars of imported spices, a dagger with a jewelled hilt, and, oddest of all, a mechanical nutcracker shaped like a lion. The recipient looks thrilled and terrified at the same time. You can't blame him. Gift-giving among nobles is as much politics as generosity. Every object carries a message: loyalty, alliance, favour, obligation. A wealthy knight receiving an expensive brooch might read it as praise or pressure. A noblewoman giving a decorated book to her husband signals prestige. A lord giving rare spices to an ally reinforces bonds in a way that today would be like gifting a luxury car. Standing at the edge of the manor yard, you also notice another kind of gift exchange, one that doesn't fit neatly into family or political categories: food gifts. Many wealthy households send leftover dishes to poorer neighbours. A platter of roasted meat is carried downhill by two servants, wrapped tightly to keep out the cold. A jug of spiced wine follows. It's not charity, they're not giving away the good stuff, but it's a meaningful gesture nonetheless. In a world where food scarcity shadows every winter, sharing even scraps is an act of communal strength. You return to Marjorie's, where the family is now in full post-feast contentment mode. The older children are playing a game with dried beans, somehow turning it into a competition involving betting, shouting, and rules that change every 3 minutes. The younger kids are sprawled under the table pretending to be hibernating bears. The adults lounge on benches, half asleep but still smiling. Now comes one of the most underrated medieval Christmas traditions, the ritual of giving symbolic offerings. For many families, this means bringing a small portion of their best food to the church: goose fat, bread, fruit, ale, either for the priest or for the poor. Marjorie sends her husband and eldest son with a small basket containing a slice of pie and a jug of cider. She's not trying to impress anyone. She's simply following a tradition older than half the buildings in town. You follow them outside as snowflakes drift lazily through the air. The village feels softer now, quieter, calmer, almost suspended between celebration and rest. A few families walk toward the church with their offerings. A woman carries a small pot of honey. A man carries a loaf shaped like a cross. A child proudly presents a handful of walnuts. The priest receives each offering with a blessing, placing them carefully on a table near the altar. Later, these will be distributed among the poor or used in church meals. Even in the most humble households, people give something, not because they can spare it, but because generosity is woven into the fabric of the season. Giving is part of the celebration, an act of faith as powerful as prayer. As you watch, you realize that medieval gift-giving isn't about extravagance, it's about connection. Even the smallest exchange, a ribbon, a spoon, a wooden toy, a bowl of fruit, carries weight. It says, "I see you. You matter. We share this season together." Walking home, your breath puffing white in the air, you think of the charm tucked into your cloak, the tiny carved evergreen sprig. A small gift, a powerful symbol, like medieval Christmas itself, simple on the surface but rich with meaning underneath. And the night is still young. The evening deepens and the village settles into that warm, glowing hush that follows a long day of feasting. The air outside has sharpened into a crisp, crystalline cold, but inside the houses, hearth fires crackle, torches flicker, and the last scraps of goose fat on plates are being subtly negotiated over like high-stakes political treaties. But there's something else stirring in the streets, something bright, rhythmic, and unmistakably festive. Music. Not the polished kind that floats from a noble's great hall, dripping with refinement. This is village music, raw, joyful, slightly out of tune, and absolutely irresistible. And tonight, you're stepping straight into the soundscape of medieval Christmas. You step out into the lane, your boots crunching on frost. Somewhere nearby, a drum thumps, a hollow wooden heartbeat keeping time with laughter. A whistle joins in, shrill and energetic. Then voices, layered, overlapping, messy, and full of life. They're singing a carol you vaguely recognize from the cathedral earlier, but the version out here feels more spirited, less reverent, more rowdy. Less angels descending from heaven, more angels had a pint or two before descending. As you round a corner, you find a crowd gathered around a makeshift circle of lanterns. Men, women, and children cluster together, stamping their feet for warmth. In the centre, a group of musicians is warming up, one with a small drum strapped to his chest, another with a rebec, a bowed, three-stringed instrument that looks like a medieval violin's scrappy cousin, one with a bagpipe tucked under his arm, and two boys tuning wooden pipes with exaggerated expressions of pain. "Play something cheerful!" a woman shouts from the back. "It is cheerful," the bagpiper protests. "Only if you're a goat being chased," she fires back. The crowd erupts with laughter, and even the bagpiper cracks a grin. The musicians launch into a lively tune, something that sends an unmistakable pulse through the cold night. It's the sort of melody that makes standing still physically impossible. A group of teenagers immediately begin spinning each other in clumsy circles, nearly toppling a lantern. A toddler copies them, spinning so fast he collapses in a giggling heap. Medieval Christmas music occupies a fascinating space between sacred and downright chaotic. Earlier today in the cathedral you heard smooth, controlled chants, Gregorian melodies flowing like slow rivers, lifting prayers into cold stone vaults. That music is precise, measured, holy. This is the opposite. This is the village version. Dance tunes, drinking songs, seasonal carols adapted with creative new verses, melodies carried by pipes, fiddles, and whatever else someone can make noise with. Tonight you'll hear instruments that look like they were invented by someone who had 10 minutes, a pocket knife, and a questionable impulse. A boy next to you blows into a tabor pipe, a small flute played with one hand while the other beats a drum. The sound is surprisingly crisp, dancing above the deeper notes of the rebec. The boy holds himself with the swagger of someone performing on the world's grandest stage. His younger sister watches him, clutching a wooden toy drum she's not particularly good at but deeply enthusiastic about. As the music picks up, so does the singing. A group of older men harmonizes with pride. Well, they harmonize with intention. The sound is less about hitting the right notes and more about hitting any notes with confidence. One man belts a verse so loudly that 3 sparrows flee from the nearest roof beam. The lyrics themselves tell stories, some biblical, some folkloric, and some absolutely made up on the spot. These songs have a life of their own. Each generation adds verses, tweaks lines, and occasionally throws in jokes that would make monks blush. But beneath the humour lies something deeper. Music is memory. It's community. It's tradition you can dance to. Nearby, a group of women begins a more melodic carol, their voices blending in gentle waves. The tune rises and falls like snow drifting on wind. You recognize one refrain from earlier in the day, a song praising the returning light after the winter solstice. Their harmonies ripple out across the square, softening the edges of the night. Then the bagpiper jumps in again, turning the gentle carol into a dance tune without warning. The singers yelp. The crowd roars. Someone shouts, "Not again," and someone else shouts, "Do it again." The piper obliges. Medieval bagpipes, you notice, are not shy instruments. They fill every space, physical, emotional, spiritual, with sound. The piper's cheeks puff impressively as he plays, and you're convinced the bag under his arm contains enough air to power a smithy bellows. You drift closer, letting the music thrum through your feet. Children run in circles around the musicians, chasing each other, shrieking with delight. Couples sway together. A group of grandmothers stamps a rhythm so steady and fierce that the drummer starts following them. Music in the medieval world is rarely passive. It demands participation. People here don't listen. They join. Even those with no sense of rhythm clap along. Even those with no sense of pitch sing loudly. Even those with no sense of balance dance until they nearly fall over. You're pulled into a line dance before you know what's happening. Someone grabs your hand. Someone else grabs your other hand. Suddenly you're part of a weaving chain of people stepping, turning, and occasionally tripping over themselves. The rebec player grins like a trickster and speeds up the tempo. The line buckles. A man yells, "Slow down, or we'll all die!" The musician does not slow down. You survive. Barely. Breathless, laughing, you stagger to the side of the square, leaning against a post as a new song begins. This one slower, softer. A woman leads it with a voice so clear it cuts the cold clean in half. The crowd hushes. The rebec plays a mellow harmony. The drum taps gently like a heartbeat. The lyrics are simple, telling of Mary, of winter journeys, of new light in dark places. Even the bagpiper stays quiet. This is another face of medieval Christmas music, a reminder that even in revelry people honour the sacred, not with the cathedral's grandeur, but with humble, heartfelt song. You feel a tug in your chest at the sound, at the raw sincerity of untrained voices weaving something beautiful together. The woman finishes her verse. A hush follows, a moment of fragile stillness that settles over the crowd like fresh snow. Then a boy near the front blurts out, "Can we do the wassail song now?" The crowd bursts into laughter. Fragile moment. Ruined. But wassailing is coming, and you know it. Christmas isn't complete without it. Wassailing, half blessing, half party, is the medieval equivalent of caroling turned up to 11. Groups roam from house to house, singing, clapping, and offering good wishes in exchange for food, drink, or whatever the host can spare. Wassailers bless orchards, fields, and homes, sometimes with such enthusiasm that you wonder if the trees get embarrassed. A group begins forming for the first wassail circuit of the night. Someone hands out cups of steaming spiced ale, the kind that warms your throat, your chest, and every questionable decision you've ever made. You sip and feel heat spread through you like a sunrise. You join the group as they set off down the lane singing a raucous wassail tune. The first house opens its door before the song ends, eager to hand out cups of cider. The second house offers fruit and small cakes. The third house pretends not to hear the singing until the brassier singer belts a verse directly through the window. Laughing, you press on with the group, voices echoing into the frosty air. This is medieval Christmas music in all its messy, beautiful forms. Solemn chants at dawn, joyous dances at dusk, soft carols by firelight, rowdy wassels in the streets. Music here isn't decoration, it's celebration, it's connection, it's the pulse of the season. And tonight, the pulse is strong. Night deepens, but instead of winding down, the village seems to surge with new energy, as if the darkness invites the kind of cheer that daylight would judge too harshly. After music comes something even more medieval. Games, revelry, misrule. The season gives people permission to loosen the tight laces of everyday life, to laugh louder, play harder, and, just for a short window, bend the rules that normally shape the year. You follow a cluster of villagers heading toward the central square, where torches blaze wildly in iron sconces. The snow has been trampled to a slushy, uneven mess, and at least 3 people slip before reaching the gathering crowd. Each time their friends shriek with laughter, and each fallen victim insists they meant to do that. Medieval dignity is flexible. The first thing you notice is the noise. It isn't just music now, it's shouting, roaring, cheering. A group of young men are attempting a winter version of a ball game, the rules of which seem to consist of grab the thing and run combined with don't die. The ball, if you can call it that, looks like a leather sack that's seen too many winters. 2 teams battle over it with the enthusiasm of people who have been fasting for weeks and finally remember how to feel alive. One man catches the ball and sprints, only to be tackled by 3 competitors who slide across the snow in a tangle of limbs. The crowd roars. A woman next to you says, "They'll break something before night's end," with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. And indeed, one player limps away grinning proudly, absolutely convinced that a bruised shin is a mark of honour. Closer to the bonfire, the older villagers gather for more traditional games. One group plays a form of blind man's bluff. The blindfolded man spins wildly, arms outstretched, while the others dodge and taunt him with the agility of people who have been waiting all year for this. Someone taps him on the back and darts away. He lunges in the wrong direction and grabs a barrel instead of a person. He loudly declares victory anyway. Not far off, a circle has formed for storytelling, though storytelling is generous. It's more like competitive exaggeration. An old fisherman begins weaving a tale about a carp so large it pulled him into the river. Halfway through, his wife interrupts, saying the fish was barely the size of her hand. He protests loudly while the crowd howls with delight. Truth has no place in winter tales. Entertainment is the only metric. If you drift even farther from the bonfire toward the edge of the square where the shadows grow larger, you find the more mischievous side of medieval Christmas, misrule. For these short days of celebration, social order loosens. The young tease the old. Servants gently mock their masters. Children form gangs of tiny tyrants. And once in a while someone is crowned the Lord of Misrule, a temporary king or queen whose sole job is to demand silly behaviour from everyone else. Tonight, a boy no older than 12 is wearing a makeshift crown of woven straw. He carries a wooden spoon like a sceptre and shouts commands with the authority of a monarch who has absolutely let the power go to his head. "Dance!" he orders a cluster of elderly men. They obey, poorly but enthusiastically. "Sing!" he commands a group of young women. They belt out a bawdy tune so confidently that the local priest pretends not to be watching. The entire scene feels wonderfully upside down, that's the point. Medieval life is strict. Rules, hierarchies, obligations, unyielding expectations. But at Christmas the tension snaps a little. Everyone plays, everyone laughs, everyone lets the world wobble on its axis just enough to feel the thrill of freedom. You wander toward a long wooden table where a game involving dice is underway. Several villagers cluster around, slapping the table whenever someone rolls well or poorly. It's unclear what counts as winning. One man who has definitely had too much ale insists he has a secret strategy. Another loudly claims the dice are possessed and should be exorcised. Someone picks one up and bites it, evidently checking whether demons taste like bone. Nearby, a group of women engage in an equally intense game. Competitive singing, not beautiful singing, loud singing. They hurl verses at one another like snowballs, each line louder and more outrageous than the last. A girl beside you covers her ears and mutters that this is worse than the bagpipes. Across the square, children invent their own games. A group plays a chasing game where they pretend to be wolves hunting a goose, an activity that is both unsettling and adorable. Smaller children sit in the snow shaping little figures from ice, blissfully unaware that their creations will melt by morning. One child insists his ice figure is the King of England. His friend stomps it accidentally and instantly apologises as if treason were involved. Wandering among the revellers, you start to appreciate how much these games matter. In a world where labour is unending and leisure rare, moments like this sustain people. The laughter echoes off timbered walls and frost-glazed windows. The fire pops, sending sparks swirling upward like fireflies trying to escape winter. The entire village pulses with life. Then someone shouts, "Mumming! They're here!" and the crowd surges toward a group of oddly dressed figures approaching from the next street. The mummers. If medieval Christmas had a theatrical troupe, this would be it. Wearing masks, costumes, cloaks, and whatever ridiculous props they could scavenge, mummers parade through towns performing comedic plays. Their stories often involve knights, dragons, doctors, fools, saints, and at least one character whose entire purpose is to get dramatically killed and then revived by the doctor, an early example of slapstick medicine. The mummers tonight are especially spirited. The tallest one wears a horned mask and wields a wooden sword. Another is dressed as a dragon, though the costume looks suspiciously like two boys under a patched blanket. The doctor carries a bag of herbs and a stick that he claims is magical. Everyone in the crowd knows the routine and eagerly waits for the moment when someone will collapse in an exaggerated heap. It happens quickly. The knight boasts too loudly, challenges the dragon, takes 2 steps forward, and then flings himself dramatically onto the ground, with a groan that sounds like furniture breaking. The doctor rushes in, waving his herbs, shouting nonsense about healing potions and miracle cures. The crowd roars with laughter as he smacks the knight on the head with his magic stick, claiming this is part of the procedure. The knight springs back to life, announces he feels better than ever, and promptly tries to fight the dragon again. The doctor yells, "Not again!" while the audience wheezes with delight. After the play ends, the mummers bow deeply and pass a hat, well, a bag, collecting coins, nuts, apples, or whatever else people toss in. It's part entertainment, part fundraising, part tradition. As the mummers move on to the next street, the games resume. Someone drags a Yule log toward the bonfire, a massive piece of wood meant to burn slowly through the night. Families saved it for weeks, sometimes months, ensuring a proper celebration. Its crackling flames become the centre of the festivities. Villagers gather around the fire, some dance, some talk. Some simply stand and warm their hands while staring into the flames with a dreamy expression of people who have eaten too much and slept too little. One man shares a story about last year's Yule log mysteriously rolling downhill into a neighbour's house. The neighbour insists it was sabotage. The storyteller insists it was wind. Everyone agrees that the truth probably involves ale. As the night stretches on, the revelry softens. The wild games calm. The loud singing drifts into softer humming. Children fall asleep leaning against parents. Couples huddle closer. Even the boy wearing the crown of misrule loses momentum and starts nodding off mid-command. The fire's glow paints the scene in warm amber light. Smoke drifts upward, carrying with it the scent of pine, ale, and distant goose fat. The cold presses at the edges of the square, but laughter keeps it at bay. This chaotic, joyful, slightly absurd night is medieval Christmas at its most human. A day of devotion, a feast of abundance, an evening of mischief, a night of games and revelry, a brief time when winter doesn't feel quite so sharp, and you are right in the heart of it. By the time dawn creeps in again, slow, pale, and hesitant, as if winter itself isn't sure whether it wants to get out of bed, the village still hums with the lingering warmth of last night's revelry. The bonfire has faded to soft embers. The air smells faintly of smoke, spilled ale, and pine. Children sleep curled against their parents. Adults stretch stiff limbs and rub cold noses, and everywhere you look, evergreen boughs hang from doors, rafters, beams, and lintels, bright splashes of green against the grey of winter. Decorations are not a side note in medieval Christmas. They're the backbone of the season's atmosphere, a way to remind everyone that even in the darkest cold, life remains. When you step inside Marjorie's home, the warmth hits you first, but the decorations hit you second. Boughs of holly strung above the hearth, ivy wound around wooden pillars, sprigs of yew tucked into every available corner, and a thick wreath hanging proudly over the table. Some houses look tidy and tasteful. Others look like someone unleashed a very enthusiastic forest spirit inside. Marjorie's, a comfortable middle ground, festive but not chaotic, lush but not overwhelming. The room still gleams with the little touches the children added yesterday. Holly branches tied with scraps of red cloth, pine cones arranged in bowls, and a slightly lopsided garland that keeps threatening to fall but hasn't yet surrendered. You notice how every decoration seems carefully chosen, not just for beauty, but for meaning. Medieval people don't decorate because it's pretty. They decorate because the plants themselves carry symbolism older than the village. Holly, with its shiny, spiny leaves, is believed to protect homes from evil spirits, bad luck, and, according to one particularly enthusiastic child, grumpy neighbours. The red berries stand out so boldly against winter's palette that they feel like defiance made visible. Ivy represents eternal life and resilience. Yew symbolizes endurance. Pine and fir, green even in the deepest cold, promise that spring will return, that warmth will creep back, that the world has not given up. Each plant whispers its own kind of hope. Marjorie's husband greets you with a cup of warm ale and nods toward the garlands hanging near the hearth. "Put those up yesterday," he says proudly. "Used the good ivy from behind the church." You know, from his tone, that this ivy is apparently legendary ivy, revered ivy, possibly holy ivy. You nod with the appropriate level of respect. As he stirs the low-burning fire, he explains that decorations usually go up on Christmas Eve, not earlier. Advent is about restraint and simplicity. Christmas, by contrast, bursts with greenery. Houses, churches, shops, even barns get dressed in winter foliage. You can't walk 20 steps without brushing against a garland or nearly poking yourself in the eye with holly. It's a festive hazard. You step back outside to get a closer look at how the whole village has decorated. The sight is surprisingly beautiful. Every door outlined in green, every window adorned with sprigs of something living, every humble cottage transformed by nature. Someone has tied a massive wreath to the communal well. Someone else wrapped the stocks in garlands, which feels a bit optimistic but very decorative. A family down the road created a small evergreen archway over their gate. The wealthier homes have bundles of rosemary, bay and juniper hanging beside the more common holly and ivy. You follow a group of villagers carrying long boughs toward the church. Inside, the cathedral glows with greenery. The scent hits you first, a mix of pine resin, crushed berries, damp leaves, beeswax and stone. It doesn't smell like winter anymore. It smells like life. Evergreens are wound around pillars. Thick garlands drape across the choir screen. Holly crowns the statues. Even the pulpit gleams with bright green leaves. Light catches on glossy holly, turning the deep red berries into jewels scattered across the space. The cold stone architecture softens under the decorations, as if the church itself breathes easier for these 12 days. As you step deeper into the nave, you pass a boy tasked with replacing wilted greenery. The branch in his hand is drooping sadly, and his face reflects that. When his father suggests using it anyway, the boy says, "We're not animals," and tosses it aside with theatrical indignation. His father bursts out laughing. In the side chapel, women weave one final wreath. They work with practiced hands, bending branches into curves, tying them with strips of linen, tucking berries into the gaps. Their conversation is soft but lively. One woman recalls a year when ivy ran short and they had to use dried herbs instead. The church smelled like soup for a week. Another claims her wreath last year was so beautiful, the priest asked if she wanted to join his decorating committee permanently. She said no, because she prefers not being bossed around by clergy. Standing near the altar, you notice something else. Candles everywhere. Light, greenery, warmth. These 3 pillars define medieval Christmas decor. In a world without electricity, candles carry enormous symbolic weight. Their glow flickers warmly off greenery, making the church feel like a forest caught inside a cathedral's ribs. You wander back into the village and find a few men wrestling with an enormous log, preparing to replace last night's dying embers with a fresh blaze. The Yule log must be large, heavy, and capable of burning for hours, or even days, symbolizing endurance through winter. Someone claims, "This year's log is so big it had its own shadows." You suspect exaggeration, but you appreciate the drama. Decorating the Yule log involves sprinkling it with ale, adding sprigs of holly, and offering a short blessing. One man takes this ritual extremely seriously, raising the jug as if summoning ancient spirits. Another man kicks snow at him for being dramatic. The log burns anyway. Farther down the lane, children carry armfuls of greenery to neighbours too elderly to gather their own. They hang wreaths on doors, tuck sprigs into window ledges, and proudly announce, "Now your house is protected." Whether from the cold, spirits, or boredom, no one specifies. But the gesture is sweet, and every elder beams with gratitude. In one home, a mother decorates her baby's cradle with a single sprig of holly. "Keeps him safe," she says softly. The baby immediately grabs the holly and attempts to eat it. The mother snatches it away with reflexes honed by necessity. Soon you find yourself helping decorate the last undecorated house in the lane, owned by an old man who moves slowly but smiles warmly when you knock. His doorway looks bare compared to the others. When you ask why he hasn't decorated yet, he shrugs and says, "Takes me longer these days." He hands you a bundle of greenery and tells you where everything should go. You hang holly above his door, ivy along his rafters, pine beside his hearth. When you finish, his home looks vibrant and festive. He chuckles and says, "My wife would have told me I tied the holly wrong." He adjusts one sprig himself, tilts his head, and nods approvingly. Later, as the afternoon dims toward evening, snow begins to drift again, soft flakes catching on every green branch. The whole village transforms beneath the snowfall. The evergreens glisten, the hollyberries shine like stars, the ivy curls gently under the weight of delicate frost. The decorations aren't just symbolic, they're beautiful. You step back and take in the view. The entire town looks alive. Despite the cold, despite the dark, despite the long winter ahead, everything pulses with freshness, with green, with resilience. The decorations do exactly what they're meant to do. Remind everyone that life persists even when the world seems deep asleep. In a place where winter can be cruel and resources thin, these boughs are more than ornament. They're comfort, hope, a promise that the deep cold won't last forever. And as the last light fades, the greenery glows softly under torchlight, casting the village in warm shades of gold and green. Christmas in full bloom. Morning arrives with a cold so deep it feels carved straight from stone. Frost rims every rooftop. Chimney smoke rises in pale ribbons. The village looks like it has been dusted with flour by an enthusiastic but slightly chaotic baker. Yet even in the quiet dawn, you can sense movement. A soft clatter from the marketplace, a door creaking, open, footsteps crunching on frozen earth. Christmas may be a feast day, but tradesmen, merchants, servants and labourers still hover on the edges of their normal work rhythms, because even celebration can't last long without someone keeping the wheels turning. You step outside and immediately spot the baker, already elbow-deep in dough. His small shop glows with firelight, brighter than the murky sky. He waves you in. "Can't let people run out of bread," he says, kneading with practiced force. "Not even at Christmas." The table beside him holds neat rows of loaves waiting for their turn in the oven. Some are simple rounds of rye, others are shaped into small plaited knots meant for holiday meals. Flour drifts everywhere, on his beard, on the floor, in the air, turning the shop into something between a kitchen and a gentle blizzard. He tells you that Advent slowed down business. People ate less, bought less, and focused more on fasting than feasting. But now, during the 12 days, bakers must work twice as hard to meet demand. Party after party requires bread, pies, pastries and wafers. Children beg for sweet buns. Servants run in and out carrying orders from their masters. Travellers passing through buy whatever's warm. Even neighbours stop by just to chat in the heat of the shop, grateful for a break from the cold morning air. From there you wander toward the butcher's stall, where a man stands proudly beside what remains of a pig slaughtered days earlier. "Christmas keeps us honest," he says as he sharpens his knife with a rhythmic rasp. "People can't feast without the butcher, so suddenly everyone remembers my name." He laughs as he wraps cuts of pork in cloth for a customer. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't get a single person to make eye contact with me. Now everyone's friendly. Other stalls in the market show signs of life too. A spice merchant bundled so thickly he resembles a well-dressed snowman sells tiny pouches of pepper, ginger, and cinnamon. He tells customers that his spices are pure enough to make angels sing. A few feet away, a candlemaker trims wicks and arranges beeswax candles in careful rows. essential items for the season's long dim evenings. Trade slows during the depth of winter. Roads freeze, rivers ice over, daylight dwindles. But Christmas provides a burst of essential commerce that keeps the village humming. The blacksmith repairs hinges broken during last night's revelry. The cooper sells barrels for storing leftover ale. The potter tries to convince you that his new jug shape prevents spills. You remain sceptical. Even craftsmen who usually don't see much winter business find their hands full this season. A carpenter works on repairing a stool broken during yesterday's dinner. Someone sat too enthusiastically, he mutters diplomatically. A weaver sells warm wool mittens to villagers preparing for New Year's festivities. A seamstress mends, torn sleeves and reattaches cloak cloths torn loose during dancing. Christmas creates joyful chaos, and chaos requires maintenance. Beyond market stalls, household servants face their busiest time of the year. In wealthy homes they rise long before their masters, stoking fires, carrying water, turning spits heavy with meat, sweeping floors covered in pine needles and muddy footprints, preparing rooms for guests, washing mountains of dishes and running messages across town. You pass the manor where servants dart in and out like winter hares. One carries a platter covered with a cloth. Another hauls 2 buckets of water on a yoke. A third tries very hard to discreetly scrub a suspicious stain from the hall floor. Inside, the steward stands at the centre of the chaos, directing traffic with the authority of someone who thrives under pressure. Even now, he mutters about inventory, guests arriving late, cooks not following recipes, and sheep getting loose again. He spots you standing nearby and waves you out of the way before a servant carrying a tray of steaming pies barrels through the doorway. "Careful!" the steward shouts, though it's unclear whether he's yelling at you or the servant. Probably both. In addition to servants, apprentices in every craft feel the pressure of the season. They fetch materials, light fires, carry goods to and fro, and fill any gap their masters identify. In many homes, apprentices serve at feasts, bring out dishes, refill cups, and sweep up spills. For them, Christmas is a sprint, a mix of work and celebration, exhaustion and pride. Of course, not every tradesman or servant is thrilled about the extra labour. One apprentice stomps past you hauling a basket of potatoes and grumbling loud enough to be heard in the next shire. "I thought Christmas meant rest," he mutters. "Turns out it means carrying heavy things while everyone else eats." His master shouts for him to pick up the pace. The apprentice rolls his eyes so dramatically it could be seen from the moon. Meanwhile, merchants, especially travelling ones, have their own struggles. Roads are icy, snow blocks passes, inns are crowded, and yet this is when people want goods, spices for feasts, cloth for new garments, candles for services, small toys for children. A pair of foreign traders, wrapped in thick cloaks, argue over whose turn it is to negotiate a sale. One accuses the other of trying to sell cinnamon at a price better suited for gold. The other responds by claiming that transporting cinnamon through snowdrifts deserves hazard pay. Despite all the work, the mood in the market remains cheerful. People wave greetings, exchange leftovers from the feast, trade stories from last night's chaos, and gossip about who drank too much ale or who danced too enthusiastically. A cooper tells you he saw 2 elderly women outdance a group of young men until the men finally surrendered, collapsing in a heap while the women kept going. You stay long enough to help a few merchants clear snow off their stalls, a task you didn't strictly volunteer for but somehow became involved in anyway. The snow is powdery and stubborn, drifting back onto the stalls just as quickly as you brush it off. But working alongside the villagers gives you a deeper sense of Christmas here. Celebration not just in feasting and merriment, but in cooperation. Even routine work feels lighter when shared. After leaving the market, you walk farther out toward the edge of the village where fields stretch in silent, frosty lines. Here, farmhands tend to animals in low barns. They check on cows, horses, pigs and chickens, ensuring the animals survived last night's cold. Christmas doesn't pause for livestock. Feeding, watering, mucking and repairing enclosures all continue through the holiday season. One farmer waves you over to help gather eggs. The hens are not thrilled. One pecks your glove. Offended you dare disturb her mourning. The farmer laughs and tells you the hens always behave like queens this time of year. Must be the holly near the coop, he says. Makes them think the place belongs to them. Down the lane, shepherds rise early to check on their flocks grazing in frost-kissed fields. Sheep huddle close, breaths puffing in soft white clouds. Shepherds wrap their cloaks tightly and press on, because even during Christmas they must guard against wolves, cold and strays. Their work continues long after the village's fires die down. You notice that even amid celebration, people speak openly about the realities of the season. Scarce daylight, the threat of sickness, dwindling stores of grain, the harshness of January lurking just beyond the holiday. Yet Christmas offers a reprieve, not an escape, but a pause, a reminder that community is stronger than cold. As evening approaches again, the marketplace quiets. Most merchants close early today, wanting time to return home and share food with their families. Servants finishing their duties hurry back to warm hearths. Craftsmen clean their tools, bank their fires, and exchange quick holiday blessings with neighbours. You make your way back to Marjorie's home, watching the golden glow of hearths flicker behind parchment windows. The village feels calmer now, like a deep breath taken after bustling activity. Inside, Marjorie has prepared a simple supper. Last night's pottage revived with a little extra broth. She insists that after so much feasting, the stomach needs gentle encouragement. The children disagree but eat anyway. As you sit down to join them, you realise that Christmas in medieval times isn't just about celebration, it's about balance. For every hour of revelry there is work. For every feast, preparation. For every game, responsibility. Tradesmen keep the village fed, servants keep households running, farmers keep animals alive, merchants keep supplies moving, and all of them, together, weave the fabric of Christmas, a holiday that breathes because people make it breathe. Snow falls again by the time dawn lifts its pale face over the village, dusting rooftops and cloaking the world in hush. You feel the cold before you even step outside, sharp, metallic, seeping through layers of wool like an uninvited guest. Today the village looks peaceful, but beneath that stillness runs a familiar winter truth. Christmas or not, travel is dangerous, hospitality is sacred, and surviving the season depends as much on your neighbours as on your cloak. You walk toward the main road, where wheel ruts cut through the snow and footprints wander in overlapping paths. A few travellers, cloaks pulled tight, make their careful way toward the village gate. Some arrived last night, greeted with warmth and food. Others are heading to nearby hamlets for Christmas gatherings, hoping to beat the next bout of bad weather. Travel during winter in medieval times is a gamble. Roads freeze unevenly. Snow hides holes and stones. Streams crust over unpredictably. You watch a man test the ice on a shallow ditch with his staff. Tap, 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 before stepping lightly across, muttering that he has no desire to become a cautionary tale told by village mothers. A family approaches the road carrying bundles. They're off to visit relatives 2 villages away, a journey that will take most of the day. The father pulls the hood of his cloak lower and gestures to you. Storm coming, he warns. You glance at the sky, grey, heavy, brooding. He's right. They'll need luck to get where they're going before the wind turns cruel. A group of boys rush past you, sliding on icy patches and daring each other to fall. A woman calls after them to watch for cracks in the ice, but they barely hear her. Their laughter rings out across the road, bright and fleeting like winter sun. At the edge of the village sits an inn, the kind with a sagging roof, a smoky hearth, and a sign so worn you can only guess which animal it once depicted. The innkeeper stands outside with a broom, sweeping snow off the steps with the determination of someone who refuses to let winter win. He greets you with a nod and waves you inside. Come warm up. Roads will claim your toes if you stand out there too long. The tavern is dim, warm, and alive with murmurs. Travellers huddle near the fire, drying cloaks and thawing fingers. A merchant from the next shire over nurses a cup of mulled ale. His voice carries as he describes nearly sliding off the road when a patch of ice turned his mule's path into a comedy routine. A pair of pilgrims share a bench, one clutching a rosary, the other rubbing sore feet after a long walk. They speak quietly of shrines visited and blessings sought. Travel is not just physical hardship, it's vulnerability. Bandits lurk along forest roads, wolves roam near open fields, illness spreads easily in cold air. Every person you see here has risked more than modern travellers can imagine. That's why medieval hospitality is not optional, it's a moral duty. The innkeeper brings a pot of hot broth to a shivering traveller who arrived late in the night. Eat, he says firmly, like a doctor prescribing warmth. Hospitality is more than comfort, it's survival. Medieval households, from farms to manor halls, are expected to welcome guests, especially during Christmas. Turning someone away in winter isn't rude, it's potentially fatal. You leave the tavern and walk toward the manor where hospitality takes on a more formal flavour. Servants hurry to and fro carrying extra blankets, jugs of ale, and trays of bread. The steward stands at the door checking off names of expected guests, relatives, allies, friends, anyone with reason to seek warmth and celebration. He mutters to himself about missing travellers, hoping they haven't been trapped by the weather. Inside the hall the fire roars high. Guests sit on benches, chatting with flushed cheeks and full mugs. A knight recounts how he nearly lost a horse in a snowy ditch, saved only by the quick thinking of his squire. Across from him, a noblewoman listens intently, sipping wine and shaking her head at the recklessness of travel in December. Hospitality here extends beyond food and shelter. It includes protection. Guests sit under the Lord's roof, sharing his fire, his guards, his goodwill. In exchange, they bring news from distant places, gossip from the court, and the sort of stories that brighten long winter nights. Back in the village, the concept is just as strong, but more intimate. Each household opens its door to neighbours, relatives, and anyone in need of warmth. Marjorie greets you at her door with a grin and ushers you inside, brushing snow from your shoulders. More guests have arrived. Her cousin's family from the next village. Their cheeks are windburned, their cloaks heavy with snow, but they're alive, smiling, relieved. Road was nasty, the cousin says, settling onto a bench. Nearly lost the wheel in a drift. Marjorie hands him a steaming mug before he even finishes his sentence. The children swarm their cousins with shrieks of joy, dragging them toward the small stash of wooden toys and dried berries saved for visitors. Hospitality extends to the smallest members of the household. Everyone shares, everyone welcomes, everyone belongs. You help Marjorie carry in extra firewood. The log stack outside has grown smaller, a reminder that winter is only beginning. She notices your glance and shrugs. "We'll make do," she says. "We always do." While the cousins warm themselves, another traveller arrives. A woman wrapped in a ragged cloak, her boots soaked through, exhaustion etched into her face. Marjorie doesn't hesitate. She pulls the woman inside, seats her next to the fire, and calls her daughter to fetch dry socks and broth. "Rest," she says softly. "You're safe. Here." The woman nods, tears shining in her eyes. This is hospitality stripped to its essence. Not formality, not ceremony, but compassion. Later, you join a small gathering headed toward the outskirts of the village to visit those too old or ill to travel. This is another custom of the season, bringing warmth to the coldest corners. People carry baskets of bread, leftover pie, small bundles of firewood, and holly sprigs to brighten dim homes. You stop at an elderly widow's cottage. Her hands tremble with age, but her smile is bright as she welcomes the group. A man piles fresh logs beside her hearth. A woman lays a cloth across her table and arranges bread and fruit on it. A child places a sprig of holly above the door, whispering a blessing. The widow holds your hand for a moment and murmurs, "The cold feels less sharp when people visit." As you continue along the road, You hear distant wolves howling from the forest. The sound prickles the back of your neck. Winter brings hunger to animals as well as people. Shepherds keep close watch. Travellers walk in groups. Livestock is brought into secured barns. Hospitality isn't only kindness, it's safety in numbers. Returning to the village, you see how homes cluster together, creating warmth through proximity. Windows glow with candlelight. Smoke curls from chimneys. Families welcome travellers, neighbours welcome neighbours, and fires crackle like beating hearts. As evening settles, you join a small supper at Marjorie's. The cousins share tales of their journey. Marjorie's husband complains good-naturedly about the icy roads. The children compare which household had the best welcome. Someone jokes that the manor's hall is so draughty people catch colds entering and leaving, while Marjorie insists her hearth could warm a bear. You sit quietly for a moment, absorbing the atmosphere, laughter drifting through the room, firelight dancing on wooden beams, snow falling softly outside like a lullaby. This is what medieval Christmas is at its core: connection in the face of cold, generosity in the face of scarcity, warmth shared because warmth is precious. Travel may be dangerous, winter may be harsh, but hospitality makes the dark season livable, and tonight, surrounded by warmth and company, the world feels a little less cold. The village sleeps deeply after another night thick with music, food and firelight, but before the sun fully rises, you find yourself drawn toward a quieter corner of the world, the nearby monastery. Its stone walls, softened by drifting snow, stand just beyond the village fields, a silhouette of calm against the pale horizon. While townspeople celebrate with feasts, laughter, and the delightful chaos of misrule, monks and nuns observe Christmas through an entirely different rhythm, one woven from prayer, discipline, silence, and subtle joy. Your boots crunch over frozen grass as you approach the monastery gate. The air smells of snow and wood smoke, with a hint of incense escaping from a narrow chapel window. The gatekeeper, wrapped in a thick wool cloak, recognizes you from previous visits and nods you inside. "You're early," he says with a small smile, "but so are we." Monastic days begin long before dawn, even on Christmas. The courtyard is still, white and muffled by snow. A line of footprints leads toward the chapel, their shape softened by the night's drifting flakes. You follow them, pushing open a heavy wooden door that groans quietly. Inside, candlelight paints warm honey-coloured pools across the stone floor. The air is cold, but not unpleasant. It carries that clean, ascetic chill that feels almost intentional, like the building itself is practicing restraint. A line of monks stands at the front of the chapel, their voices blending in a slow, deep chant that rolls through the space like a tide. The sound wraps around you, steady, measured, ancient. You recognize fragments of the melody from earlier services in the village, but something about the monastic version feels different, more focused, more inward, like the sound has a purpose beyond being heard. The monks sway gently with the rhythm, hands hidden within their sleeves. Their faces are calm, though a few look pale with sleep deprivation. Even Christmas cannot erase the effects of a 3 a.m. wake-up bell. A novice near the back rubs his eyes, trying to stay alert. The brother next to him nudges his elbow and whispers softly. The novice straightens, blinking like someone startled awake by spiritual duty. Despite the monastery's reputation for austerity, Christmas here is no ordinary day. The chants are more elaborate, the readings are longer, the candles are more numerous, arranged with reverent care. Even the air feels charged with significance, as though the stone walls remember centuries of prayers rising from this very floor. After the service, the monks file toward the cloister in silence. You follow at a respectful distance. The cloister garland, unlike the lavish village decorations, is simple. Evergreen branches hung in straight lines tied with plain twine. A single wreath hangs above a wooden bench, unadorned except for a few red berries tucked into the greenery. The beauty lies not in embellishment, but in restraint. The monks walk with deliberate, unhurried steps. Christmas for them is not a break from the rule, it's a deepening of it, a feast of the spirit more than the table. You pause as the abbot approaches. His robes are thick, his beard dusted with frost. He greets you with a gentle nod. "You're welcome to observe," he says quietly, "but keep warm. We lost a candle wick runner to frostbite once." The corners of his mouth twitch as if he's not entirely serious, but his eyes twinkle as though he enjoys letting visitors wonder. The morning meal is simple: bread, cheese, pottage and watered ale. Still, compared to daily monastic, fare, often more austere, Christmas breakfast feels almost indulgent. You sit on a wooden stool along the wall while the monks eat in silence. The only sounds are the scrape of spoons, the crackle of the small fire, and the steady voice of a monk reading aloud from a manuscript. Reading during meals is a long-standing tradition. No one eats without nourishment of the mind. The passage today describes the Nativity, written in flowing Latin. The words seem to settle into the very grain of the wooden tables. A few of the older monks close their eyes, not in sleep but in deep listening. A novice shifts on his bench, trying to look attentive while rubbing warmth back into his toes. After breakfast, the monastery shifts into structured activity. Even Christmas must be ordered. Some monks head to the scriptorium, where daylight filters softly through narrow windows onto parchment pages. You follow one of the scribes inside. The room is cool, but warmer than the courtyard, and it buzzes with quiet purpose. Monks sit at desks copying holy texts, their quills rustling faintly. You watch one carefully illuminate the capital letter of a passage with red ink, his hand steady as he curves each stroke. He explains that Christmas week is an ideal time for copying joyful readings. Good for the soul, steady for the hands. Another monk sharpens quills, piling them neatly on a cloth. He looks at you and says, "The goose from last night's meal gave us several fine feathers." He pauses and adds, "Not that we ate like nobles, but Christmas allows a little cheer." He holds up a quill with pride, admiring its sleek curve. The kitchen is another hive of activity. Unlike the lavish feasting in the village, monastic Christmas meals are modest but still celebratory compared to ordinary days. Today the cook stirs a pot of fish stew, seasoning it with herbs saved especially for the holiday. A loaf of enriched bread sits waiting. Enriched meaning it contains a bit more flour and maybe an egg. To the monks, that's a feast. One brother carries a basket of apples to be stewed later. Another kneads dough for small buns. The aroma of warming spices fills the air, soft, subtle, nothing like the boisterous smells of village kitchens. The cook hums a quiet tune as he stirs. When you compliment the smell, he snorts and says it's nothing fancy. "Last year someone donated dried figs," he adds. "We ate like kings." His eyes glaze with fond remembrance. In the orchard, a few brothers wrap evergreen sprigs around the bare branches of apple trees, a symbolic protection against winter's bite. The ground crunches underfoot, the air sharp with cold. One monk jokes that the trees will think it's spring and try to bloom immediately. The others shake their heads, but you see a few smiles break through solemn faces. Inside the dormitory, another kind of Christmas labour unfolds, caring for the sick. The infirmary is warm, lit with extra, candles and smells of herbs, mint, sage, thyme, bundled and hung to dry. A monk tends to an elderly brother with a cough, tucking him beneath wool blankets and offering warm broth. Another treats a young novice with frostbitten fingers, gently applying salve. Compassion flows quietly through the room. The abbot joins you later in the refectory, where he oversees preparations for the midday meal. "Our celebration is humble," he says, "but joy doesn't require excess." He gestures toward a tray where fresh bread cools. "We eat together, pray together, work together. That is our feast." As midday bells toll, the monks gather for another service. Candles burn brighter. Voices rise in more complex harmonies. The air trembles with warmth and devotion. You stand in the back, letting the sound wash over you, a slow river of faith flowing through the stone. The Christmas afternoon brings periods of quiet reading, meditation, and communal prayer. The monks move in a steady cycle: chapel, work, meal, rest, prayer, work, prayer. It's a rhythm as natural to them as breathing. Near sunset, the nuns from a nearby priory arrive for a joint Vespers service, walking in a line through the snow like a flock of blackbirds. Their chants blend beautifully with the monks, creating a tapestry of sound that fills the chapel from floor to rafters. For this brief hour, two separate communities merge into one voice. After Vespers, warmth spreads through the monastery, subtle, gentle, glowing. The monks share a second small meal, this one accompanied by fruit and a little wine. They eat slowly, savouring both the food and the company. You sit by the fire afterward, watching flames dance against iron logs. A few monks gather near you, exchanging soft stories, memories of past winters, times of scarcity, rare moments of abundance. One monk recalls the year a travelling musician performed for them on Christmas, filling the cloister with melodies that echoed long after he left. Another remembers a winter so harsh the monks slept in their cloaks to survive. Despite the monastery's austerity, there is laughter tonight, quiet but genuine, rippling gently through the room. A novice accidentally trips over a bench and tries to pretend it didn't happen. Several monks smother their amusement behind their sleeves. Even the abbot's shoulders shake with silent mirth. By nightfall, the snow has settled thickly again, muffling the world outside. The monks light lanterns one by one, their glow warm against the stone. As they disperse to their cells, the abbot thanks you for visiting. Christmas is a season of stillness as much as joy, he says. Remember that. When you step into the night, the cold bites your skin, but the memory of candlelit chants lingers like a warm ember beneath your cloak. The monastery stands quiet and steady against the darkness, an anchor of devotion while the world around it sings and feasts and celebrates. Different rhythms, same season, different joys, same light. Christmas in all its forms continues to unfold. The monastery's peaceful stillness lingers with you long after you've walked back toward the village, but as you return to the snow-crusted roads and the distant hum of activity, you can feel the world widening again. Because medieval Christmas isn't a single thing, not even close. Step beyond this village, beyond this region, beyond England itself, and you discover an entire continent's worth of holiday customs. Some familiar, some strange, some surprisingly wild. Europe in the Middle Ages is not uniform, and Christmas, more than almost any other feast, reveals those differences like lantern light revealing the grain in wood. You start your morning stroll with a simple question: what would this same season feel like somewhere else? And the moment you ask it, the village around you seems to shift in your imagination. Snowflakes drift thicker, hearth smoke curls soft and low, and suddenly you're standing in a medieval world much bigger than the one your boots currently occupy. First, picture England, the place you've been calling home these past days. Here, Christmas stretches into the 12 days, from December 25th to January 6th, full of feasts, games, wassailing, and a healthy amount of controlled chaos. Households decorate with holly and ivy, people gather around roaring fires, lords of misrule preside over rowdy merriment. It's a blend of warmth, mischief, and devotion. And the weather? Cold. Always cold. The kind of cold that makes even sheep look annoyed, but step across the channel into France and the tone shifts. In French towns and countryside manors, Christmas is equally grand but more theatrical, more polished. The French love pageantry. Nativity plays bloom in town squares. Actors don elaborate costumes, angels with oversized wings, shepherds with rustic props, kings wearing crowns that glint even under winter's dim sun. Some plays are solemn. Others, well, let's just say medieval humour leans boldly into slapstick. French feasts mirror the drama. The tables groan under roasted meats, spiced stews, and tarts filled with apples or almonds. And instead of an English mince pie, the French enjoy a thick Christmas loaf. Pain d'épices, sweet with honey and spiced with ginger. You can practically smell it just imagining it. In noble households, musicians perform long into the night, their lutes and harps creating an atmosphere so refined you half expect the cheese to stand up and applaud. Now drift eastward toward the German lands. Here, Christmas still carries threads of older winter customs, folk rituals deep enough to leave fingerprints on the season. Imagine standing in a timber-framed village nestled among dark forests. The air smells of pine, smoke, and snow. People decorate with fir branches, hang carved wooden ornaments, and burn incense that curls upward, in thin, silvery trails. But the most striking German tradition is the parade of masked figures. Villagers dress as animals or wild spirits, horned masks, fur cloaks, carved wooden faces. The costumes look fierce, but the purpose is protection, scaring off evil spirits lurking in the winter dark. Children squeal and hide behind adults, peeking out only when the costume figures dance or clatter bells to chase bad luck away. Inside German homes, Christmas is quieter. Warm bread flavoured with anise, winter ales, and tables glowing with candles set in wreaths of evergreen. Families gather to read scripture, sing carols in close harmonies, and share stories passed down through generations. It's a blend of Christian celebration and ancient winter wisdom, light against darkness, comfort against cold. Turn north towards Scandinavia, and you feel the season shift again. Colder, darker, wilder. In these lands, winter is not merely a season, it's a force. Daylight barely lifts above the horizon. Snow lies deep on rooftops, but warmth thrives indoors. Scandinavians weave their Christmas from two worlds, Christian festivities and old Norse traditions lingering like embers beneath the snow. You can see the Yule goat, crafted from straw and bound with red ribbons, standing proudly near the hearth. Children believe it watches over the household. Adults remember older stories, of the goat connected to ancient winter celebrations. In some towns, youths dress as goats and wander door to door performing songs, tricks and antics that make villagers laugh until their sides ache. Scandinavian Christmas feasts are hearty. Thick stews, smoked fish, roasted meats, dense breads, and mugs of warm spiced drink to chase the cold from your bones. And the bonfires? Magnificent. Tall flames crackle under star-pinched skies. People gather around and tell stories while sparks leap upward, as if trying to join the northern lights. As you drift south toward the warmer climates of Iberia, the tone brightens. Snow gives way to crisp air. Lanterns glow along streets lined with whitewashed walls. Churches echo with lively music. Iberian Christmas carries a vibrant, almost musical quality. Processions filled with drums and pipes, children singing in groups, bells ringing in every direction. In Castile or Aragon, you might witness a zambombada, a celebration where villagers play zambombas, rustic percussion instruments that buzz and hum with rhythm. People gather in circles, singing carols that twist between solemn and spirited, their melodies echoing off stone streets. Feasts feature olives, almonds, sugared pastries, roasted lamb, and fragrant stews. People share wine warmed with spices. Neighbours wander house to house offering small gifts, figs, nuts, sweetbreads. In some towns, children carry small wooden cradles holding carved infant figures, singing to each doorway they pass. And in far southern regions near Moorish-influenced towns, medieval Iberian Christmas may blend Christian and lingering cultural traditions, rich music, decorated courtyards, and foods infused with spices carried from distant lands. The season feels bright, warm, and filled with movement. You find yourself imagining Italy next, another world entirely. Rome at Christmas is a swirl of incense, echoes, and grandeur. Churches gleam with candlelight reflecting off marble. Choirs fill basilicas with sweeping melodies. The streets bustle with vendors selling chestnuts, pastries, and wine. The feast is extravagant, but equally important are the rituals: midnight masses, processions, offerings at shrines, public charity. In rural Italian villages, the season is gentler. Families gather around long tables. Children help prepare panforte, a dense Christmas cake packed with nuts, spices, and honey. Shepherds in the Apennines play zampognas, bagpipes whose soft, warm tones echo across valleys. Picture them standing under a winter sky, playing ancient tunes that have survived countless generations. The music feels older than the cold itself. Austria sits somewhere between Italy's pageantry and Germany's solemn forests. Here, villagers carve intricate wooden figures for nativity scenes. Church bells ring clear in crisp air. Families prepare feasts of boiled meats, dumplings, and sweet breads. And in some alpine regions, winter creatures, carved, costumed, half mythic, wander the roads, reminding everyone that the season bridges old and new. All across Europe, the core of Christmas remains the same: devotion, hope, winter survival, generosity, and community. But the colours change, the flavours change, the sounds change. No two places express Christmas exactly the same way. Yet as different as they are, each captures something essential. In England, it's the joyful unruliness. In France, the pageantry. In the German lands, the blend of Christian light and ancient forest magic. In Scandinavia, the fierce warmth against the freezing darkness. In Iberia, the music, the movement, the communal glow. In Italy, the echoing beauty of liturgy and tradition. You pause in your walk through the village and breathe in the cold air, marvelling at how many lifetimes of winter the world has lived through. How many candles burned, how many evergreen boughs hung, how many families gathered around fires sharing stories and bread. Marjorie's youngest child runs past you, bundled so tightly he looks like a woolen onion. He plops into a drift of snow, squealing with delight. At the same moment you imagine children doing the same across Europe. French children singing carols in narrow streets, Scandinavian children chasing each other around a Yule goat, German children peeking nervously at masked figures, Italian children helping knead dough, Iberian children striking rhythms on makeshift drums. Different languages, different customs, same wonder, same winter breath fogging the air, same hope, carried through the darkest days. And as you stand beneath a sky heavy with snow and centuries of tradition, you feel the vastness of medieval Christmas, not just here, but everywhere. 1,000 celebrations, 1,000 songs, all unfolding beneath the same winter stars. The days begin to soften around the edges, as if even winter senses that Christmas is winding toward its close. You step outside into air that feels familiar now, cold enough to sting your nose, gentle enough to let you breathe deeply. The village looks calmer than before. The decorations still hang on doors and beams, but their greenery has dulled slightly, their berries shrivel just a bit, like the season itself is exhaling after all the feasting and singing. The 12 days of Christmas have stretched from the brilliance of the feast day through nights of revelry, music, storytelling, and warmth. Now they begin to taper off, not suddenly, but gradually, the way a fire settles into glowing coals. Nothing ends abruptly in the medieval rhythm. Everything fades gently and with purpose. This morning Marjorie hands you a small knife and directs you toward the garlands above the hearth. "We'll take some down," she says, "but leave the ones that still look lively." It's a balance, clearing clutter without chasing away the last hints of celebration. Holly branches crackle as you unwind them from the beams. The smell of crushed evergreen fills the room, both fresh and fading at once. Across the lane, you see other families making small adjustments. A man removes a wreath from his door. Children gather pine cones that dropped onto the floor. Someone sweeps out the bits of greenery that crumbled onto the hearthstones. No one rushes. These small acts feel almost ceremonial, tidying the season, acknowledging that the world is ready to turn forward again. Inside the church, the greenery is still lush, but monks arrive to begin the slow dismantling of the most fragile arrangements. They leave the strongest boughs in place until Epiphany, the great closing celebration, but they tidy the wilted ones with quiet care. A few children peek inside, hoping for one last moment of echoing adventure before the decorations vanish. Their whispers bounce between the stone walls like tiny ghosts of the holiday. Epiphany, January 6th, is the final jewel of the season, and the village is preparing for it like a deep, concluding breath. When you step outside again, the air carries the scent of baking. Women prepare the last round of holiday treats: spiced buns, sweet rolls, honey cakes. Not as elaborate as the Christmas feast, not as extravagant as the New Year's revelry, but still enough to mark the closing of the festive days. Marjorie is shaping dough into a round loaf, pressing a dried bean into the centre. For the 12th night cake, she explains. Whoever finds the bean becomes the mock king or queen for the night. The role is temporary, silly, and cherished. Leadership by luck, not lineage. Authority by pastry. The children buzz with anticipation. You overhear one whispering that if he finds the bean, he'll order everyone to sing until dawn. His sister vows to outlaw chores for the entire next day. His other sister swears she will demand extra pie. Ambition thrives in young hearts. As night falls on 12th night, the village gathers once more. Candles dot windowsills. Fires blaze. The air hums with that bittersweet blend of celebration and awareness that something is ending. Marjorie's house is full again. Relatives, neighbours, friends drifting in with mugs of ale and bowls of stew. The 12th night cake sits in the centre of the table, its golden crust gleaming in firelight. Children stare at it as if it contains treasure. In a way it does. Slices are cut, passed, eaten. One by one, everyone inspects their piece, hopeful. Then, there's a yelp. The youngest child stands, face triumphant, holding up the dried bean like a relic of immeasurable power. The room erupts. He's immediately crowned with a garland that sits slightly crooked on his head. He puffs up, raises both hands, and declares that his first royal decree is that everyone must dance. Everyone complies without hesitation. The dancing is gentler than earlier celebrations, softer steps, lighter laughter, a kind of warmth that feels quieter in your bones. Even the musicians play slower tunes tonight, as though giving the year a graceful bow. Later, the boy king commands that someone tell a story. An elder begins recounting a tale of winter spirits and wandering stars, his voice low and steady. The flames crackle. The wind pushes against the shutters. The room fills with stillness, the kind that only happens when people share breath and space in perfect contentment. Eventually the boy king yawns, his garland slips sideways. Marjorie catches him before he topples off the bench. A good rain, short, bold, sleepy. When you step outside into the night, the village looks peaceful. Lanterns glow softly. Snow falls in slow drifting flakes. The air is still, as if the world is listening for something gentle. You walk toward the church for the last service of the season. Inside, candles burn low. The priest speaks in a voice warm with gratitude, naming the blessings of the season. Warmth, food, community, hope. He reminds the villagers that winter is far from over, that hardship still lies ahead, but that Christmas has given them strength to face it. Greenery rustles softly as a draught moves through the nave. You look up and see a few leaves fall, drifting like tiny green feathers. Nothing lasts forever, not even holly. After the service, the priest gives each family a small blessing and a piece of blessed chalk. People will use it to mark their door lintels with protective symbols, letters and numbers meant to guard the home through cold months. It's quiet magic, simple magic, the kind woven from faith and reassurance. You walk home under a sky thick with stars. The snow beneath your boots glows faintly in the moonlight, and as you approach the house, you see Marjorie's husband marking their doorway with chalk, his motions slow and deliberate. The season is ending. The world feels softer, and your heart feels very full. The house is quiet now. The fire has burned down to a warm shimmer, and the last murmurs of Twelfth Night drift away like threads of smoke. You sit near the hearth, letting the warmth reach your hands, your legs, your breath. Outside, snow settles gently, covering the village in a soft white hush that smooths every edge and slows every sound. You breathe in, slow and deep. The air tastes like wood smoke and pine. You breathe out, even slower. The weight of the season melts from your shoulders with each exhale, replaced by something calm, steady and comforting. Around you, the remnants of the holiday linger like soft echoes. A sprig of holly left on the table, a ribbon forgotten on a bench, a half-burned candle casting its last bit of light. The room feels wrapped in a tender sort of stillness, the kind that comes only when joy has been fully lived and is now gently resting. You let your eyes close for a moment. The warmth from the hearth sinks deeper into your bones, and the sounds of distant wind soften into a lullaby. Somewhere in the next room, a child turns over in sleep. Somewhere outside, a dog sighs and settles into straw. Every sound is slow, softened, welcoming. This is how Christmas ends in the medieval world. Not all at once, but in a long, gentle fading. In warmth shared, in quiet rooms, in peaceful breaths, in the reassurance that even the darkest winter nights hold light if you stay close to the fire. So you sit there, wrapped in the glow, letting the world dim around you like a candle being cupped in gentle hands, letting the story slow its steps, letting sleep come quietly, and when it does, it settles over you like fresh snow, soft, calm, and complete.